Hi everybody, Nate Richards here from Richards Guitar Studio, and today I'm going to take you through some of the musical examples in my article Guitar Triads Part 1, and that's found on guitarcoachmag.com. Check it out, it's a great website. If you're on YouTube right now, click the link below, it'll take you to the article. So what I want you to do is make sure you read the article and go through some of the musical examples on your guitar. And then what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to take you through some of those and kind of walk you through how the thirds and triads and chords and everything work on the fretboard. All right, and I'll be referring to the musical examples so you could have it open in a new window or new tab or whatever. So the first thing we want to do is get the sound of major chords and minor chords in your ear before we start, just so you know how they sound. So if you know your open position chords, let's say for example A major and then A minor. Just notice how they sound different. D major, D minor, E major, E minor. If you know your bar chords, you could do like a G major bar chord here, and then lift the second finger to make a G minor. So the point is though that let's say we pick A. A major is a nice bright sound, whereas A minor is a little bit darker, even a little bit moody sounding. So they definitely have a big sound difference as far as what feelings they might express or whatever. So if we're looking at the article at Figure 1, what we have here are called thirds. And thirds are intervals. So an interval is the distance between two notes. And a third is a specific kind of interval that has a specific distance to it. The reason we want to learn these is because all chords are built with thirds stacked on top of each other. So let's say, for example, we're on an A note and we go A, B, C. So from A to C is a third because it spans 3 letters in the alphabet. All right. So, or you could do the same thing on B. Let's say B, C, D. So from B to D spans 3 letters in the alphabet. That's a third. So chords are built up with like stacks of these. So what we want to do is just take a look at some major and minor thirds and look at the difference. So if you're looking at Figure 1, you have a 2nd fret on the 3rd string to the 6th fret on that same string. And let's notice the difference. So a half step, the distance. A half step is 1 fret, a whole step is 2 frets. So if we count the distance from this note to this note, so we're on this one and we go half step, whole step, 1.5 steps, 2 steps. So from A to C sharp is 2 steps. That's the distance of a major third. It's a pretty good stretch for your fingers, but you can hear the sound of a 2-step distance or 4 half steps, however you want to think about it. The next one in that line is a minor third from A to C. So all it is 1 fret lower, which makes it 1.5 step interval. So we start on this 2nd fret note and we go half step, whole step, 1.5 steps. So from A to C is a minor third, the distance of 1.5 steps. So that's it. That's the difference between a major third and a minor third. Major third, 2 steps. Minor third, 1.5 steps. All right. So that's Figure 1. And also notice on Figure 1 that on the musical notation we have an A and a C, A and C sharp, and then an A and C. So if you remember what we said before, from A to C spans 3 letters in the alphabet. So from A to C sharp and A to C. Notice they're both A's and C's. We just get different variations of sharps and flats. All right, so and that's what makes them different major or minor thirds or even diminished or augmented once you get to more advanced kinds of intervals. A to C is always a third. It just depends on, is it a C sharp, is it a C, is it an A, is it an A flat, or is it an A sharp or whatever. So once you figure out that the specific A and C you're talking about, then you can measure it. So one more time for this Figure 1, we ended up with A to C sharp and A to C as our example of a major third and a minor third. So they both have the same letters. One has a sharp, the other one doesn't. Okay, so if we look at figure 2, all right, we're going to take a look at how these can be played like chords on the guitar. This time we're going to do a third from the note G, open G. So if you have G, A, B in the musical alphabet, so from G to B is a third. It just happens that G to B is a major third. So if you do G, open G, and you go half step, whole step, 1.5 steps, 2 steps. So from G to B, 2 steps is a major third. And then if I take that first G, that open G, and I play it on a lower string here, and that's in the second measure there in figure 2, that's how I can play those two notes together. Instead of playing open 4, I can play 5/4, and that's how they sound ringing together. The minor third, if you remember, was just 1 fret lower than the major third, which is 1.5 steps. So from G, half step, whole step, 1.5 steps. So that's my 3rd fret. And I have open to 3, G to B flat. Notice G to B flat, the same 2 letters, just one has a flat, the other one doesn't. And then I play the G on the 5th fret here, and the B flat there, and now I have a chord. So G to B, major third, G to B flat, minor third. So this is the case for all of the strings, and if you scroll down to the bottom of the article, you'll see a bunch of guitar diagrams that demonstrate how the major thirds and minor thirds look on the fretboard. But let's say I take that major third, G and B, and I move it. Let's say I start from the low E string. That's a distance of a major third. That one happens to be A, C sharp. This one, D, F sharp. That's a major third. G, B. Now when we get to this set of strings from the G to the B string, the shape is going to change. And the reason is if you know how to tune your guitar, relative tuning, there's always that one on the 4th fret there, that B. So since it's tuned differently, the chords are going to look different when you stack the notes up. So in the second line there of figure 2, we have an open B, whole step to 4th fret, that's a D sharp. So that's our major third, two steps. And when I put the B on a lower string, it ends up being the same fret. So that's a different shape than we had over here, which is like 2 and 1. This is just your 1st finger. So it still sounds like a major third, it just looks a little different because of the tuning of the guitar. And then when you get back to the B to E strings, it goes back to the regular shape that we had before. Same goes for the minor thirds. They're all minor thirds, but then when you get to this one, B to D, that one has a different shape than these. All right? And then we go back to the minor third there. So that's what figure 2 is all about, is showing you how the shapes of the major thirds and the minor thirds work, and how they look on the fretboard, and how they're basically all the same except for when you're playing on the G and B strings, the shape is going to be different. Okay, next thing is triad. So if you look at the next figure there, I have all these 4 diagrams that show you major, minor, diminished, and augmented triads. These are the 4 triads that you can have, and they're basically the 4 prime form chords of like all of the music we listen to. So if you have a crazy sounding chord like C major 7 sharp 9, or sharp 11, sorry, C major 7 sharp 11, or G7 sharp 9. So any of these like weird crazy chords, essentially what they are is variations and add-ons, notes added to a triad. All these chords kind of go back to, you can trace them back to a triad essentially. So what we want to take a look at is the musical examples of each one of these. So if you're looking at the G major triad musical example in figure 4, we have open G and then a 4th fret and then a 7th fret. And then we have a chord, 5, 4, 3. And that's on the D, G, and B strings. So if we take a look at each one of those distances, from the first note open to 4, that's our G to B major third, which was 2 whole steps, right? G, and I go half, whole, 1 1/2, 2. So that is a distance of a major third. Then if I look at the distance to the next note, which was on the 7th fret, I can see that that's my minor third, 1 1/2 steps. So when I'm looking at this, I have a major third and then a minor third. When you have those 2 intervals combined together, you get a major chord. Alright, if I take all those, put them on different strings, that is a major chord. So every major chord in the history of music is that, a 2 steps plus 1 1/2 steps, or a major third plus a minor third. Alright? So when you hear, like, for example, Beethoven writes at the end of a symphony a huge, big, full orchestra chord, what you're hearing is like 30 G's, 20 B's, 15 D's, or whatever. I mean, you know, it's going to be those 3 notes, G, B, and D, major third plus a minor third, distributed throughout the orchestra. Same thing goes on the guitar. If I play a big G chord like this, this one is G, B, D, G, D, G. So I have 3 G's, 2 D's, and a B in that particular chord. So I'm playing 6 strings, but I only have 3 notes. And the way that I've figured out, you know, which notes go with a G major chord is simply measuring major third and then minor third. So I have a G, go to a major third, and then a minor third, and there you go. You can do that with any note. So find any note you want, do a major third, minor third, and those are the 3 notes that that add together to make that specific chord. The next one is a G minor triad. So we're going to flip the intervals. We're going to start with a minor third, G to B flat, and then we're going to do a major third. And that's that next line there in figure 4. Notice that the open note and the 7th fret are the same as the major chord before, but the only difference is that middle note is moved down 1 to B flat. So this chord is G, B flat, D. All right, and then when you put that together in a chord, it's D string 5 and then 3, 3. So here's your major, 5, 4, 3, and then 5, 3, 3. You could even see some of those shapes we talked about. 3 to 1 being a minor third. And remember the major third before, when it goes from the G to the B strings, was like the bar. So you can even break it down that way too if you want. So you have a major chord, minor chord. Alright, so if we move on now to figure 5, these are the 2 more rare chords, less used in rock and pop music. They're there, but not nearly as much as the major and the minor chords. So a diminished chord, or diminished triad, is when you do 2 minor thirds. So you're going to start with G and go to B flat, and then you do a minor third from there, and that's a D flat. G, B flat, D flat. Notice I called this fret D flat, and earlier in the lesson we had that fret called C sharp. The reason I have to call it D flat for this example is G to B flat is my first third, and then B, if I count the alphabets, B, C, D. So from B to D is a third. So I have to have some kind of B to some kind of D. In this example, I have a B flat and a D flat. If I were to call this a C sharp, then I would have B to C in the alphabet, and that's a second. and that interval is called an augmented second. We don't want that as a weird thing, weird interval. So we want G to B flat to D flat. The difference there might sound trivial at first, but actually in the long run, it's super helpful to make sure that you think about the intervals that way, and make sure you spell them correctly. The next one we have is the Augmented Triad. Oh, I'm sorry. At the end of the Diminished Triad, I write out the chord 5, 3, 2. Nice dissonant sound there. So now the Augmented Triad, we have open, 4, and 8. So notice this is two major thirds on top of one another. So we have a major third from open to 4, and then another one from 4 to 8. Notice that's stretched to two-step position, or 4 half steps. That one kind of sounds weird. 5, 4, 4. So they are the all 4 triads, and what you can do is go through each of those examples again and practice them, get them in your ear, and then also take a look at all those diagrams at the end of the article, and kind of play around with them and see if you can spell them. So for example, if I do a major third here, all right, that's an A and that's a C sharp, right? I don't want to call that one D flat there, because A, B, C sharp, right? If I did A, B, C, D flat, that's called a diminished fourth. That's kind of weird, so we don't want that. We want to make sure it stay from A to C sharp. Maybe another one is from E to G sharp. And then let's say I try some minor thirds. I'll start on D and play from D to F. Or if I go to a C, I'll play from C to E flat and see if I can make sure I'm spelling them correctly and figure out the notes. So there you have it. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below, and enjoy the article, and I'll see you for part 2.